I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. We are the Gainesville group of the Florida End-of-Life Doula Association. I'm a board member on the association. And so the Gainesville group has a meeting that we do on Zoom every second Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And our co-sponsor is Elder Care of Alachua County, the Senior Recreation Center. Nick and his crew over there have been wonderful, helping us get the word out and supporting our mission. And so I got started in this work of being an end-of-life doula right after my mom died in June of 2018. She died in April, and she was in Haven Hospice House at the time, and I had cared for her with her Alzheimer's for years and had to kind of move in and live with her. So somewhere maybe on the radio or somewhere I heard about end-of-life doulas, and I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. I think I could look into that. So I did. And in June of that year, I trained with INELDA, which is the International End-of-Life Doula Association. They're still very active and very good organization. That's the only training that I've taken. And I really enjoyed it. So I immediately realized that we need to find our niche in that work, because then we can kind of focus. At least that's what I did. And I also immediately started looking for other doulas, which I thought I was the only one in Gainesville in 2018. But when I got back and looked around, I saw that my friend who had done ritual at our wedding and also at the Earth Day festivals that I had organized in the past, Anna Schwait, was also already an end-of-life doula here. So I was like, yay, there's more than me. And so I started organizing, calling people around the state, putting the word out. I guess that's kind of how I am. I like to reach out and see who's around and have conversations, because I think connection is super important, and lack of connection brings, I think, discord and disease. So anyway, eventually we had a meeting back in I think it was 2019, to start forming our mission, vision, and values. And then COVID hit. And so we went on to Zoom for some meetings that we were having across the state. And then our group incorporated a year ago, January. So I love sharing about this work. I love giving the information and seeing who's around. And really, really happy to be here today. And so, Carolina, would you like to introduce yourself? We've all just said a few words about ourselves and why we're here or what we're interested in.
Sure. I was having technical difficulties, but I'm happy I'm here. Hello, everybody. I am experienced as a veterinary technician, and I got out of that field and ended up getting a master's in psychology. Long story short, I started thinking about people, how they feel and what happens when you lose a pet, and the fact that euthanasia is involved sometimes can bring a great sense of guilt. And with all I've learned and all that I experienced when people had to put down their animals, from realizing there's an issue, like with senior pets, or even a young pet that gets a prognosis that knocks us down and we don't expect. How can we manage uh, finding out such a bad news? How can we figure all of that with grace and think about the best? What can we do the best for the animal? Will they Are they having a good quality of life or not? When do we make the hard decision? All of that can be filled with guilt. So my idea and what I want to offer people is the ability to have that conversation, decide quality of life, and be able to make decisions that are tough, but without guilt. And be there with them if they want me to be there during the moment. If they're scared of being there, I can be there for them. And additionally, even after the fact, how can we honor that being in a way that's pure, and it can gives us a positive take away from it all, as opposed to holding on to that pain forever. There's ways in where we can cope after the fact and not just always be a sad topic.
We are the Florida End-of-Life Doula Association. And I'll read our mission. As an association of Florida End-of-Life Doulas, we provide resources, non-medical care, advocacy, and compassionate support to the dying, their families, and friends. We collaborate to provide education, support, and resources for end-of-life doulas in Florida. Our vision is Florida End-of-Life Doulas support, empower, educate, and serve our communities. Our values are compassion, cultural sensitivity, mutual support, cooperation, harmlessness, based in local communities, advocate for client autonomy, communication, transparency, respect, dependability, dignity, trustworthiness, honor, reliability, compassion, and self-care. And our primary goal is to improve the quality of life, reduce stress, and provide comfort to the dying, their close friends, and family members. What do doulas do? As we said, we provide non-medical care. We support the dying person and their family and friends, of course, family, however known. We provide practical, spiritual, and emotional support. We make every effort to listen deeply to the needs and wishes of the client and the family. We advocate for the client's wishes, as sometimes we have to do because others around them might wish something different. We educate the people involved, assist in resource development, grief support, advanced care planning, and advanced directives. We some spend time around the actual active dying stage, so we help to arrange the space, sit bedside vigil, and also consider body disposition options, because sometimes people don't think of all those things. Some of the benefits of doula care is to create comfort for the dying, earlier emotional support. A lot of times people wait to the last and it's really hard. Again, more attention to the wishes, increased support for family, improved peace of mind, better continuity of care. That is, sometimes a doula can be a go-between or a communicator among the different aspects of the person's care. Life review, legacy, guided imagery. We can talk more about these things. Ritual as appropriate, acceptance, as we said, bedside vigil, planning the body disposition, and also assisting the family to prepare the body if they wish, and grief support to lessen the isolation. This is a photo of my hand with my mother's hand as she lay dying at Haven in Gainesville. So, acceptance of death. End-of-life doulas help to navigate the journey towards death. This can be for the dying person as well as the family members and friends. When we accept the fact that death is approaching and prepare ahead of time, we're better able to avoid confusion, stress, and anxiety. Sometimes we need to face our fears so that we can begin to accept death as a natural part of life. And advanced directives, that's the documents themselves. And it's very important, of course, to have these documents and also to keep them updated from time to time. I'd suggest at least every year or so, and to have conversations with the people who are involved with you and your documents. The will, the power of attorney, living will, and healthcare surrogate are all essential. So advanced care planning goes beyond the documents, and it talks about, what the details of what the person wants, all kinds of details around preparing for end of life. There's this document called an ethical will, and it addresses the personal history, values, beliefs, life lessons, and hopes for the future. It's a gift one can give to family members and friends who will live on. And it states what is important in the inner workings of the person's life. So it's a very personal document. Life review. We understand the importance of remembering key events and players in one's life. Sometimes by talking it through, our worries about leaving the world can subside. And legacy project is your story. It can come in the form of photos, music, other items, memories. Now we have all kinds of technology and video, but things that are meaningful to the person's life. And if the dying person is able, they may participate in this work and direct it. But if not, others can create a legacy project. It's a nice way to remember someone. Now, this is, I spoke about my mom. This is a photo I took of my mom as we were preparing to go out for a walk. And so I saw, okay, let's see. And I decided to just wait and let her do what she was doing. I had taken the Savvy Caregiver class, and that helped me to understand that I just needed to be patient and relax. And but so eventually I said, "Hey, Ma, you want some help with getting your shoes on?" And she said, "Sure." And we finished getting the shoes on. We went for our walk. But so practical support can take many forms. Again, advanced directives, body disposition, consulting about a memorial service. And doulas can really help to avoid the excessive expenses that funeral homes, charge. And then the emotional support. We really, it's good to have honest expression of our feelings. And doulas really make an effort to provide a safe space without judgment or advice or criticism, just listening. So, yeah, and of course, spiritual support, whatever beliefs and ways the family or the person has of belief, we just accommodate and support their wishes. And we want you to be as comfortable and stress-free as possible. And deep active listening is where we just ask open-ended questions and allow time for silence rather than jumping in and giving solutions, just encouraging the person to have their own process and to be heard, not advised. It's a good practice. So that's the end of our little piece here. And we have a website. It's not very fully developed yet, but our website is fielda.com. We have a Facebook page, Florida End-of-Life Doula Association. And our email is fleolda with an L @gmail.com. And there's my number. I'm the vice president, and Lynn is the president of the organization if anybody wants to contact us. All right. We're just going to open it up to questions, conversation, comments.
Do you charge for your services?
Yes, we most generally we do. It's a trade of in life that profession that we have invested hours and dollars in, just like any other. The thing is, of course, we're not yet acknowledged by the insurance companies. I'm hoping I have a vision that 10 years from now we will, because the services that we provide help prevent greater expense to the system, to the families with ER visits, funeral expenses, all kinds of things where we really do save. But as far as the insurance, it's not covered yet. So each individual doula charges according to what they decide. It's setting up a small business just like any other.
Could you give a rough estimate of what it would take?
Well, it depends. Some people sell a package. They sell a package deal where There are so many hours of sitting vigil and so many hours of preparation, but there's really no one size fits all, because you probably, maybe you have all your papers done, but your neighbor doesn't. So it's really on a case by case basis. Myself, for an individual hour, I'll charge $100 when someone can afford it. But I tell them, this isn't, for me, it's not about money. It's about you getting the help that you need. My specialty is grief, and I don't like to turn people away. So I like, well, do you think you could do 40? Or, I just want to make it work. But it's sort of sliding scale in that case, because some people have plenty of money. Some don't want to spend the big bunch of money they have. Others, like they can buy a ticket to Ireland and back, but they don't want to give me $100. You know what I mean? It's like, so you kind of have to work with people on getting them to understand the value. Does that make sense?
Oh, well, it does. And I did this for my uncle who had dementia in Las Vegas, and I was in Florida. And the smartest thing I did was hire a geriatric social worker through his elder care lawyer recommended her. She was a blessing. I mean, and she said, I charge $125 an hour. And at first it's going to be very expensive because I'm going to set everything up. Once it's set up, then I will pull back and make it happen and just oversee to make sure everything stays working. So, but I'm telling you, it was, of course, it was his money. It wasn't my money. It was his money, and it was very well spent.
Right. And sometimes we are left in charge of taking care of the person's money, and we have that trust account or whatever that is. And you're right. Because it's just like anything, once you get through the big muck and get things in place, then it goes more smoothly. And so you can always cut back. And but the value of having that big ball of yarn, figured out is tremendous, emotionally, personally, in many ways. So, yeah. And there are doulas who are retired, who want to volunteer, and that's fine too. I have no problem either way, because some people resent, oh, well, why should they not charge? And it doesn't matter. Anyone can do, it's a free country. Everyone can do what makes sense for them. Yeah. A lot of us, as in our retirement, are entering this field. Margaret, yes.
You mentioned that you act as an advocate. I think that was the word you used. And I have no children. I have hired an attorney who prepared all my documents, and my attorney is to be the healthcare surrogate if my husband predeceases me.
Mhm.
Now, it would seem to me beneficial to have a doula as well for my personal interaction at end of life. But it would also seem we would have to get to know each other first, and then you'd be, quote, on call or on my list of who to notify. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
in that case, people like lawyers and doctors, they have a real place in the world, right? And the work they do is quite a lot. It's expensive. And so a doula can provide the sort of intermediate services, or the fill in the gaps in a way. And like you say, yeah, they'll be there for you personally. And a lawyer's great for the papers and for taking care of that business. But yes, a doula can really be
Well, and I think the attorney is very helpful if it becomes not a contest, if there's a disagreement between the medical community and my wishes.
right.
So
It's
the
good to
attorney
have that.
usually has that clout. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
Yes,
But I think the doula would have the emotional end of it,
Mhm.
the hand holding or
Yeah.
whatever. So it
Yep.
seems to me, and tell me if this is logical, that you and I would have some consultation time, and you would know who I am and what I'm about, and we
Mhm.
check in from time to time with each other, and
Mhm.
then you're on the list, when
yeah.
things are getting close. Or if I need to use final exit, maybe you don't want to be involved with that. Final exit does have exit guides, so there's that.
Right, sure. And it's all up to what's agreeable to people. And, we usually try not to decide that unless there's something that's completely against our ability to do with good conscience, we usually accommodate the person and their needs. I mean, within the limits of the law and our own conscience. There are a lot of people who do the work, remotely, which is still helpful. You can find someone in your area, hopefully, but you can also do these things on, as you see, Zoom's pretty good.
Mhm.
It depends on if you need a physical handhold or just someone there that you can call.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet? Comments, questions?
I wanted to comment, Margaret's proactive attitude is awesome. Congrats. Yeah, a lot of people don't think about these things like in that detail, so that's really cool. That's how I want to be as well. And like you said, you were like advocate was the key word and all of that. So
Mhm.
that's awesome.
I have another question, if I may.
Yes.
Um, how do you define the period of death? I mean, hospice is 6 months. Do you do
Mhm.
6 months, or do you let the person define it, or what?
Oh, yeah, no, we do all before, during, and after. Because it's never too early to make preparations. I've heard it said that from the moment we're born or the moment we're conceived, we are on our way towards our death. We're not that we're dying, active dying, but we're all moving that away, and we're one day closer than we were yesterday. So the unfortunate thing is that kids, when they turn 18, they don't address these things. Because then there's a car accident or a motorcycle accident, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm never going to die. I'm good." Yeah, something worse might happen. You might live and be paralyzed for the rest of your life and not be able to get around and do stuff. So what we try to do is normalize these conversations that in our culture are so difficult for people to have. Sometimes you have an older person who's very happy to talk about it. And this is a little bit maybe the case in my family, where it's just kind of hard to approach it, but the elder is fine with it and the kids don't want to hear about it, or they don't want to think about it, or they don't, or they're touchy about, well, maybe the issue of money will come up, and they or whatever uncomfortableness. And but it's never too early and it's never too late. And I can tell you, I've had situations where I had a friend, a person who was going to take my grief support group class. I have a 4-lesson class that I offer in groups. I do it on Zoom, and also I do it in person. And she was going to be in one of the in-person groups. It was just going to be 4 of us in my living room, very small, good little group. And she came to the first class, and then she said, no, she said, my daughter, she had this brain cancer when she was 8, and we've been through a lot, but she's 19 now and she's in remission and we're doing good. And I don't want to do the grief now. And I said, well, I understand that. That's great. And then she called me some months later, and her daughter had died in her sleep at 19. And so then she did call me, and at first I was sort of stunned and didn't quite hear what she was saying. She said, she's gone. And I said, gone? She's 19 years old. Oh yeah, she's a wheelchair kid. I don't think gone means ran away. She died. And so the younger brother, the older sister, and the mother were there with her body in her bedroom, and absolutely didn't know what to do. And so they'd already called 911, and the sheriff was in the house too, or on the property. And so I ended up going over that day and spending an 8-hour day with the family. So in other words, we can be spur of the moment. We like to plan, but you can't, life is improv. You can't plan. I do improv at the senior center on Mondays, and it's helped me tremendously because we just kind of have to roll with it and do our best to jump up and address situations. So anyway, it's and then the aftercare for me is the grief. I've had people who have 30 years built up, and I have people who that call me the day after their only child dies on a motorcycle. And it's an honor and a joy to be able to help people in those really tough situations. So, yeah, so advanced directives and advanced care planning are for everyone. Those items really need to get out far and wide. I did get an email from someone at Okamic yesterday who was looking for advanced care planning help. April 16th is National Healthcare Decisions Day. Our group did do a program a couple of years ago, but I'm going to be in Arizona in April, so I'm not going to be around to participate in that. But well, Elizabeth, you were asking about that, and you may have some things to contribute to that idea.
So yeah, I've been thinking about this myself. I recently lost my mom, and we had a wonderful support throughout that. And believe me, it's really necessary, especially when you have family members that don't always agree. The doula can definitely be that person that keeps things calm and focused. So and my mom did have a green burial, which is another option, which was really beautiful, and we all enjoyed that. But the reason I've thought about it, I've always had an interest in this area because I've done the advanced directives at the hospital for many years when I worked at Shands and at the VA. So I just came back from the library, and we're going to do a display at the library, a couple of the libraries on April the 16th. So I said, well, if you don't die during your tax season on April 15th, April 16th, you can start your advanced care planning.
Have a day after party.
Yeah. So anyway, I just was speaking with my sister-in-law, who's the chief of primary care in the emergency room at the VA. And I thought that maybe she could do a talk for us about just how it really plays out in the hospital. What happens? We do that form, right? And we say, this is our wishes, but what really happens when you get there and you're in that spot in the hospital? What does the doctor think? What is the position of the doctor? What is the legal position of the hospital? It is your wishes. It's not concrete in stone. So how does a doctor handle that? How does a hospital handle that? I thought that's a unique aspect, because I think that when people are actually doing these forms, they don't really think about how it might really play out with them and their family. And I think that really helps us to be proactive. I'm really big on being proactive, and people of all ages, not just seniors, but everyone should probably have these in place, especially the younger you are, the more difficult it is for your family, because ultimately that's who's going to be making these choices for you. If you don't, is your family. And is it fair to put that on them? So yeah, those are some of the things I'm thinking about for April 16th. You have the power to decide. I think that's a good theme. You have the power to decide. And then it might draw people over to look at what it is you have the power to decide, and that'll be the advanced directives. So thanks for
Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we can keep, yeah.
Yes, Margaret.
I was going to say, in terms of decisions, as you just said, oftentimes it's a wish. And that's why I try to be well prepared with legal help. It's my understanding that a DNR will not be honored if you're hospitalized. So that's a tough one, to navigate.
Is that true, Elizabeth? I thought it should be.
I don't understand that to be true. Oh.
My husband was supposed to have day surgery, and we talked with the surgeon beforehand and said, no, we have a DNR in effect, right? Right. We got there, and it was surgery was canceled. We had to
Oh.
suspend the DNR for 24 hours. And the reason given at that time, I don't know if policy has changed, the reason given, this was a couple of years ago, we don't have a grieving room. And I said,
No,
in a
that
day
can't be.
surgery center, and I said, I think if he dies during this procedure, the grieving room is not going to be of primary importance.
Right.
That sounds like a bizarre reason, doesn't it?
And they've probably come up
No.
with other things. Now,
No.
I've had surgery and they said that I didn't have a DNR at the time, but they said it wouldn't be honored until I'm, out of surgery.
Well, here's the thing. If I'm a surgeon, I'm not. But if I was a surgeon, I'd be like, I'm here to save this person or to be responsible for their life while they're in my care. The reason we're going through surgery is we want to live and we want to live well. And so if they die in surgery, I'm like, hell, I don't want to be sued. I who knows who's going to come out of the woodwork to give me trouble. So I can understand it from the doctor's point of view. I just think they should be honest about their reasons, because the grieving room is the whole world. Is the anyway, that was my thought. As you can tell, I'm pretty strongly opinionated.
All right. I'm glad you brought that up about the doctors, because see, that's another thing is doctors are humans too, and they have their own ethical and religious beliefs. So you have to be careful about, and the hospital has to be careful about this too, because if the doctor says, I don't agree, this is against my religious beliefs, then they might have to get someone else to step in and be okay with what your wishes are.
Good
Yeah, and I
point.
would think that as they're preparing for surgery, they would be asking all these kinds of questions. But yeah, so okay. Stacy, have you found some things that you think would be of use to you? And is there anything else that you would like us to talk about?
Yeah, Shanti, honestly, and here I've been here for years, but I never knew there was such a thing as a doula. I did not. So it sounds like to me that this could be, it sounds like the support, the emotional aspect of this, with working with a doula is probably a lot more, like you said, a doula services, they're non-medical. Even when you go to Haven House, those are medical services. And even though, the nurses and the folks coming in, they're very kind, they're monitoring the pain, they're talking to the family, but they leave out. And no, this is, I cannot believe I've never heard of a doula. So I'm tickled to hear this.
Yeah, I could have, as you're speaking, I could think that you could, if the village had funds for something like that, you could have someone come in, even just providing this kind of information and questions and answers and something once a week. You could have a group, you could have a time that because it helps, it'd be more bang for your buck, you'd help a lot of people and they can help each other because they can converse about these things.
Absolutely. And Shanti, I was already thinking of that, mentioning to our life enrichment team that brings in all the activities, the speakers and things for the residents. I know there is a grief support group, but I'm honestly wondering, I'm not sure if a resident heads that up, but this would be beneficial for our residents to know this. And maybe other folks know of it, but I've never heard of it. So no, I'm very glad to have this information.
That's great. And by the way, everyone, I put my email address as my name there, so I'm not gonna pursue you, but please pursue me. Mary, or you can put yours in the chat if you'd like to. Yeah.
You want me to put it in chat?
Oh, your emails? Sure. Everyone can put your emails.
No, I just have a question.
No. Speak.
Okay, I thought that doulas started out as birthing assistants.
We
Is that
did.
right? In Africa?
Well, I'm not sure where, probably all
Yes.
over the world, everywhere where there are moms and
And then it's more
aunties. And
recently that they've gotten into dealing with death issues. Is that
that's right
correct?
there. Yes, the movement with the death doulas started around, I think, about 20 years ago. In fact, the one who founded in Nelda that I took my training with, Henry Weiss, was one of the first to start a school for training. And so, yes, I mean, it makes sense, right, that there be a woman that would attend with a mother, however many babies she's had, to help with the emotional support, nursing, babies crying, what do I do? You know, just support. And so we're very glad that we've started the other end of life. By the way, I had my first baby. I had studied the Lamaze method, so I did go to a hospital because I was a single mom at my mother's house, and we went to a Seventh-day Adventist hospital up in Boston area. But the other three babies I had with no at home, with not even a midwife. We actually just had it hippies out in the woods, had our other
Oh
three.
my gosh.
But but also being the baby boomer generation, as you know, I went to Woodstock and did all the civil rights protests and Vietnam War protests, went to jail for that, you know, a few things. But so now all of us boomers are here at the other end, and there's a lot of us. And, you know, there's so many things we need to think about for our quality of life. You know, I mean, I envision communities that are alternative healing communities, where we use natural methods and don't depend on that medical system. You know, how many people want to die at home? How many people do die in the hospital or not at home? So I don't know, kind of, I'd love to paint a vision and have some gatherings around our vision for our community and how it would be set up. To avoid, and again, you know, the work we do avoids those terrible expenses. Not only is it expensive, but it's uncomfortable going through all that stuff. The medical system is designed to keep you alive at all costs. I mean, I worked in a hospital for 11 years. That's our job. The doctors feel that's how they're trained. They're not trained extensively in grief or these alternative things. They're trained to keep you going. And I've seen a doctor in the ICU where a little couple came out wearing their overalls. This is a rural area they lived in, their overalls and their little country selves, coming out of the ICU room saying the heart rate was 30, the person was dying. And the person says to the doctor, "Doc, he doesn't want everything done. He wants us to let him go." And the doc says, "Oh no, his heart rate's 30. We need to put in a pacemaker." And literally, he did. He got his way and he got his pay. Sorry to say, you know, there's so many cases like that, and lots of stories to tell. So,
Disrespectful to the spirit.
yeah. Yeah, the Earth Mother is hurting badly enough right now. Yeah. So this is just awesome. I'm loving this group. I hope we can do it again. Yeah. I'm starting to think that our Wednesday meetings should just be like this, just sharing. Yes, Stacy.
So I have a question for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you mentioned, and sorry, ladies, I just don't know. And I will admit, you know, sometimes I hear things and I think I should know this, but I just don't. And if I've not heard it or read it, I just don't know.
You
You
don't know it.
mentioned, Elizabeth, your mother had a green burial.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm almost thinking I've read something about that. Tell me what that means.
Okay. It's actually, to me, it was really beautiful. It's where you're buried naturally in the ground. You have to be wrapped or laid in some kind of organic material. We had her in a like a muslin. She was wrapped in muslin and she wanted a wicker basket, so we bought her a wicker basket. And you are laid to rest in the ground, just like the old days.
Yeah.
It was so funny because my dad did not want this. This was very foreign to him. He thought, you know, you have to have a casket and all that, you know, embalming, a viewing. But he actually, after we did it, he loved it so much. Now he's going to be buried like that. But I explained to him, and it took, his pastor to explain to him too, that this is how you used to be buried in the old days. This is how it was done. It was the Civil War that brought embalming into our communities. So it's really a beautiful thing. You can't, it's really interesting because you can't pre-plan that, because it's a nonprofit. But I was, we had money set aside the day I knew she was going to die. So a few days before, I went out to the conservation. We have it here in Gainesville, and talked to Carlos, who's a great guy, and he helped me pick out a spot. And it went a lot smoother. It seems like it's weird not to be prepared, but it really does work out to have that, to just let it go, let it flow the way it's going to, because it's really a supportive thing. But it was beautiful. All her friends came out, and we sang next to the grave, and we all helped to put dirt on her wicker basket, and the kids put flowers and things. It was just a beautiful thing. I felt more natural to me than any coffin-based funeral I've been to.
Absolutely. She was returned to earth. Yeah.
I'm going to go to Mary Kilgore.
Yeah, the cemetery is named of Prairie Creek Conservation Unit, and it was actually started by the son of friends of mine here at Okamic, Bob Hutchinson. Many of you know him as a local politician, and he still helps dig the graves, every single grave. He's 70 years old now. But yeah, a lot of people I know, people at Okamic and other places, have been buried out there, and everybody has that same experience that Elizabeth talked about. It's a very nice, natural thing, and you can pick a spot. You don't have any. They know where you're buried, but they don't have any headstones or anything. It's just a beautiful spot out in the country. So
And the land is preserved through forever.
Forever. Right.
Yeah, Carolina.
Yes, I wanted to add with pets, that's another part of the grieving process that I, am working with, which is after they pass, if you want to do a burial and, plant flowers, so your pet is now feeding plants that now grow in your garden. And when one of my pets passed, the process of digging that grave was like rough, but it was so important for me to grieve through that. He was a small dog, granted, little dachshund, so it was, but just the process of thinking about it before it happened, thinking about how do I want the garden to look like, and then actually going ahead and doing this, like, having his little body and placing it in the dirt, and then creating a garden from that was an incredibly healing exercise, and is something that I want to help people do should they wish to perhaps bury their pet, and create a garden or something from that.
Beautiful. Yes, so nice. Margaret, were you wanting to say something a little bit ago?
After Carolina spoke, I was going to say that you can dig the grave at Prairie Creek as well. We did that for our neighbor, and you will have help from Carlos if you need it. But it's not 6 feet deep, so don't be intimidated. It does not have to be 6 feet deep.
You're right.
And I guess I would suggest for the folks at the village that possibly you investigate, Prairie Creek, an organization called the Conversation Project, Death Over Dinner, Death Cafes. And if you start some of these little meetings at the village and keep them as casual and light as possible, you might be surprised how many people you'll have eventually come on board and really accomplish something to open the door. I hosted in my home a group several years ago, and we called it Death Over Dinner. And it was quite helpful to some people who had not
Mhm.
even considered, the documentation that you have to prepare, or at least think about, and the communication you have to convey to your friends and family and neighbors, I would suggest too.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yep.
and Death Over Dinner and Death Cafe, if I'm not
Death
wrong,
Cafe.
they all have a prescribed format that you use for those meetings. But we had one, we just did it at the library every month originally before COVID. We called it Conversations About Death and Dying. We put a pretty, flower picture. We just posted it. So there are things that OCAMIC and the village and people can do without the professional input. Just by looking stuff up and learning stuff on your own and sharing it and bringing it up. The conversation project is the one for advanced directive conversations, and that's the one we said everyone should, be having. So, I mean, I'd love to, you can hire me, but I'd also love to advise you on different things you can do. Some of both, maybe. And I did want to say that the word advocate, when I told you about the 19-year-old who died and I assisted their family, well, as a doula, the mother was in absolute shock. They had videos of this child at the store in her wheelchair laughing and playing the day before. And when I saw that video and I realized that it was the same t-shirt she was wearing when she had her body was dead, I was like, it clicked to me that how real that was. But what happened was, and we had a different sheriff at the time, and I don't know who our new sheriff's going to be, but the sheriff deputies told us that they had to remove the body, that they were not allowed to leave the property until this child's body was removed. And I, as a doula, said, oh no. And they tried to take the mother alone and without me in the room. And I complied with that for a minute, but then I came in and I stood right there because the mother's in complete shock. And we have we have home burial. We have home funerals, and there is even a right to have home burial if you have enough land and you want to have a cemetery on your farm or on your land. So we need to keep people knowing about this stuff and bring it back. But I had to hold off those deputies, and the two of them later, their sergeant told me that they were just crying out in their car from what they'd seen. They were sweet guys, but they were under orders from the sheriff to the sergeant to them to not leave and to push us to move her body. And they said, well, we have a list of funeral homes. We can just call the next one on the list. Well, you guys decide what you're doing. And I said, we know what we're doing. We know which crematorium we're going to. We're good. You guys can go, And so you can't put a price on that. That was just such an honor and a joy to be able to do that for them. Eventually they left, but then the sergeant came knocking on our door and I answered the door and I said, it's okay. Because the doctor had been called and the doctor already signed off on it. So there was no suspicion of wrongdoing. The doctor, in that case, I can see we're not leaving when it looks really suspicious because it could be a murder. But so anyway, it takes a lot of learning. And for me, I had my 3-day weekend training, and then I just studied and Googled and learned because I'm a curious old lady. I just turned 73, and I hope I'll have 20 more years to do this because it is a great pleasure. So the other thing I wanted to mention is, we're going to wind up in the next few minutes, but I have a neighbor who 8 years ago was told that she was going to need a new heart. And now she is way up on the transplant list. So she did everything she could to delay it and do everything right. But she's now waiting for a heart, and it's pretty critical. And so I became, her neighbor doula, so I'm interested in kind of learning enough to be able to call myself a transplant doula. I have a friend who is the transplant doula. She's here in Florida. her name's Michelle Montgomery, and she wanted to come to the meeting today, but she couldn't. And she has a curriculum for organ transplant doula. But you know, when you think about it, there's so many areas, right? There's so many areas of grief, death, loss, you know, doula work. And so I'm hoping to be able to, I've already been able to help assist this friend. And now her sister received a new heart 8.5 years ago. So she helped her sister through that. And now her sister's helping her through this. And I recorded both of them video recordings a couple weeks ago. And so I have that video. And so, you know, I'm going to be putting those together. So there'll be there's just such a wide array of, and it's not, we had fun today, right? I mean, it's not all terrible and horrible. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun to think and talk and share about these things. Yeah. How about you? What have you found today, Doris? Let's go around and share a little bit of something we've learned today.
Well, I learned about the green burial, but in addition to that, I think I want to let everyone know that I'm 86. So I think I'm the oldest one in attendance. And I have started working on my papers, my second go round, that is. And I had a son who was hit while riding his bicycle 2 years ago, and he was almost killed, but he survived. He had surgery on a broken leg 3 times. So now he's gotten all of his papers in order too. So we're working on it. Wow. And I didn't know about doulas either, Stacy, until recently. And it's very interesting, and I'm glad to learn about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doris. I guess I'll sort of call on people. Let's see, Mary, would you like to share something?
It's been very informative. I'm glad I Zoomed. I'm going to factor it into the stuff I'm doing at Okamic. Doris, do you live at the village?
No, I live in Brook, what is it? Whatever this place is. Meadowbrook, I'm sorry. I've been
Meadowbrook,
here for years
okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I am.
But I'm intrigued that Stacy from the village is learning something. I did pass information about this to our head of whatever she is, activities, but she has the flu. So she's homesick. Yeah. So I don't know, Catherine Osmond. I don't know if you know her, Stacy, but no, I'm going to factor it in. I don't think we're at that point yet at Okamic. We're still trying to get basic information, but I'm going to amend the paper I wrote to mention the doula program. Oh, so
wonderful. Thanks for that.
I won't at this stage give them your phone number.
Why not?
I have it, but we're trying to keep this short and sweet. So
sure, that's fine. How about you, Margaret? Anything highlights from today?
I particularly like more of the details of what you do and what services you provide and when you provide them, because I think we can get started on something to at least create a relationship, because like you say, we never know, do we? And the fact that you help to support families, if I am to predecease my husband, then you would be a part of our family and know how to support him.
That's right. Yep. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, and Elizabeth, a highlight?
So I learned what you do. I was just curious, what does a doula do? And now I know. And I like the idea that you're going to be there for people, whether they have a family or especially I don't have children either. So for those of us who are single and are going to need, that support, or for the support of people around us to understand what our wishes are and what we want to have happen, as well as have that support of someone loving and kind like you, Shanti. So that was good to learn. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks. Yeah. And we'll go to Carolina.
I took lots of notes, lots of highlights, but I love the concept of the ethical will. And I also like to learn that there you can do digging for humans for your own burial. I think the digging action is so important. So that's super cool that that can happen for people too.
So we'll go to Stacy.
Okay. I love Elizabeth. I'm so glad I asked you about the green burial. I almost did not, so I'm glad I did. I love that. We talk a lot and we have folks come in discussing things like advance directives and having your will and your power of attorney and all these documents in place, but it is so much more emotionally than the paper. Those are the things we have to have done, or they're necessities. But the emotional part of the grieving, I've told so many folks for so many years, and I think families don't look at it this way, but when folks have been married for 50, 60, 70 years, and you lose a spouse, you are in a new phase of your life, whether you want to be or not, you really are. And Shanti, let me ask you this. I'm just curious if you have any input on this. It seems my time working here, women can handle the grief and the loss of a husband better than men can handle emotionally the loss of their wife. And I think it seems, everyone always thinks that they will lose their husband first. And when it doesn't play out like that, so many men are just devastated. It seems women can handle that grieving process better.
Yeah, and it goes to our culture and our society and our conditioning that women are allowed to cry and talk and have coffee clutches and reach out and have girlfriends. And, guys are just more conditioned to be independent and all strong and solitary and stuff like that. So I think that, it's really important for all of us. And as you see, we're all women here today. Well, except perhaps one, I don't know. But, it's so true. And that's why it's important to open up that conversation with everyone. And yeah, men just tend to handle it and manage it differently.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I want to say in closing. One is that I personally participated in the second ever burial at Curry Creek Conservation Cemetery, because it happened that our friend David died just as they were opening. So they buried Kathy Cantwell there, who was an environmentalist, a pretty well-known Gainesvillian, July 20th of 2010. And on July 22nd, my friend, our family friend, died in his home with a heart condition under the care of hospice. And we had a funeral director who is active today. Her name is Jane Roy, or they know her as Weed. She works with William Heath, my dear friend, who's also on the board of our Florida End-of-Life Doula Association. So William is a funeral director and a doula. So anyway, she was an intern at the time. So she helped my daughter run and get the permit for transport, because you have to have a transport permit. We decided to put him in the bed of his little pickup truck. We rolled him up in his quilt, and it has to be all cotton, wool, or linen, all natural fabrics. We rolled him up, put him in the back of the truck, and slowly drove out to that beautiful place. And we lifted his body out of his truck, and we placed him in the grounds. I do have a little PowerPoint presentation from that day, which I presented at the National Home Funeral Alliance conference in Minnesota back in 2019. So anyway, and now they've got many, many people. We used to think we were going to be cremated. Well, unfortunately, cremation is very cheap and very harsh, but it's also tremendously harmful to the environment. So it's kind of sad to me that it's so inexpensive and so harmful. Kind of like, I don't know, maybe junk food or something. But anyway, once we saw Prairie Creek, we're like, oh no, we're all signed up to go there. And as you say, you can't prepay, but you can pre-plan, and that's where doulas come in to help pre-plan. But you can sign a paper committing that you want to be buried there, and then when it's time to go, they have your name basically. So yeah, and I think that's it. I think we had a good time.